Well, I think the circular or the research the circular consortium is doing is quite important as it, first of all, provides some interesting and relevant insight for patients and for us discovering more about atrial fibrillation and the underlying mechanisms of it, but also because I think the circular consortium, at least in the field of biomedical research, is doing something differently in terms of including the patients at the core of the consortium and using this as a quite unique approach to doing research, which isn't done often in this type of medical research, in this type of, even cardiac research that, atrial fibrillation is concerned with. My name is Maurice Remy. I'm doing a PhD at the VU in Amsterdam at the Athena Instituut. I have a background in global health research, but also a lot of experience in different kind of health research settings. I am very interested in the inclusion of different kind of voices in research, in political processes. In my PhD research, I focus on the inclusion of patients and their experiences in shaping health research, in particular now in the setting of atrial fibrillation. In my PhD research, I focus on including patients' experiences and their knowledge that they have acquired on their own to shape a lifestyle intervention. In particular, we want to develop a dietary treatment based on the whole food plant-based diet to help patients change their behavior, their eating behavior, to improve their nutrition and hopefully reduce episodes of atrial fibrillation. In my research, I try to interact as much as possible with patients and get their opinion on what I'm doing, but also how I'm doing this. So I speak to patients in a very open manner and ask about what is important to them, what have they encountered in their life. For example, how have they dealt with the challenge of living with atrial fibrillation, but also adapting their diet based on having this condition. So using their perspectives, I'm trying to shape my research and also try to include them in every step of my research. So as soon as I collect data, I include them in different participatory methods, but I also, when trying to analyze and make sense of the data that I've collected, I will ask patients to give me feedback on what I've learned or if they can agree with my conclusions that I make out of this research or of my data collection. So I really try to have them holistically engaged with everything I'm doing. So I think with research, and especially research, the way I'm doing it with including patients at a lot of steps, sometimes the length is unpredictable, especially because patients might not always be available, and we of course also need time to speak with enough patients. I cannot only talk to one person and be like, oh, that's the perspective of patients, because especially with atrial fibrillation, the experience of patients is so unique and so diverse. So it can take a long time. At the moment, I expect that my research will take about 2-3 years to get some very significant evidence that we can use also to potentially change how healthcare and treatment for atrial fibrillation patients is done here in the Netherlands. Well, I think there are at least two perspectives, if not even more arguments for why the research is important. Well, on one hand, atrial fibrillation is a very widespread condition for patients, so it's affecting quite a lot of people. So from this aspect only, it's important to find new mechanisms on how to deal with this condition, how to treat this condition, but also because so far there hasn't been any very effective method of dealing with atrial fibrillation episodes and reducing them over a long time. So if we can find new ways on helping patients, that might be helpful. On the other hand, also, I think in a lot of medical research, patients' perspectives aren't so central and so heard. So having this kind of more, not fully groundbreaking, but quite unique research also helps paving new ways of doing patient-centered research, and then in long term having patient-centered healthcare. So I am currently quite at the beginning of my research. I'm at the moment having a lot of interviews and conversations with patients, with cardiologists, electrophysiologists, and dietists, talking about what a whole food plant-based diet in the context of atrial fibrillation means, but also how can we bring patients to change, how can we help patients changing their behavior. So I'm talking a lot and seeing where there is a need to develop new tools, but also what are the needs that needs to be addressed when speaking about atrial fibrillation, when speaking about dietary change. So this will hopefully then inform the further design of my research and the further ways of how I engage with patients and with their experiencing atrial fibrillation. Next up, the plan is to develop useful and comprehensive intervention. So a program to help and support patients changing their dietary behavior towards a more plant-based and a more whole food-based diet, and then trying to test this out together with patients, how well it is working for them, how well it will reduce their burden with atrial fibrillation, and which ways we still need to maybe improve it and adapt it, especially because, as I already said, the experience of patients is very unique. So we might need to have a very unique plan, and also, I think just improving it further and further so it really helps everyone to deal with it in some way. Well, I think first of all, I hope to achieve and find a good way on supporting patients to change their nutritional behavior, but also maybe giving them a way of feeling more empowered, feeling more in charge of their condition. So if you can change your diet, you might also deal better with atrial fibrillation and reduce the burden you have with that. And hopefully, that creates like more satisfaction for patients as well in the long term. Well, I would encourage each and everyone who lives with atrial fibrillation to really think about their diet, what they're eating, and how that can affect their health, and how they potentially could change their diet to have better health outcomes. And I think also on the website of the AFib Foundation, we have some resources on that, but also just this existing community that will help each other when someone has a question, how can I change my eating behavior, how can I eat less meat, or how can I have more healthy foods in my diet, where do I find it, do you have any recipes, do you have any experience how to change it? So I think in that sense it's helpful. And then of course also there are surveys happening within that community that help us again in the research, and I am sure I will also rely on it at some point.